Today's lecture is about decentralization and local government, BPAM 22. And today we are going to look at financial management in local governments. Financial management in local governments, how these local governments manage their finances under the Local Government Act. So briefly, I will introduce the topic and then we look at the sources of revenue and how the revenue is being managed at the district and sub-county levels. So the transfer of responsibility at the local government goes hand in hand with the decentralization of finance, which is called physical decentralization, which calls for sound financial management. And this involves resource mobilization, revenue sharing, budgeting, implementation of the budget, monitoring, and accountability. The Local Governments Act and the Financial and Accounting Regulations 2006 streamline the financial management procedures to be followed in local governments. So members, let us now look at sources of government revenue, of local government revenue. Where does the local government get revenue from? And this is as per Section 80 of the Local Government Act, which provides local governments power to levy, charge, and collect fees and taxes as a means to generate local revenue. And the fifth schedule of the Local Governments Act clearly spells out the regulations governing the local government's revenue. Therefore, the sources of local government, revenue include the following. The sources of local government revenue include the following. Grants from central government is the first source. The central government gives grants to the local governments, and these grants are in various forms. They include conditional grant, and a conditional grant, and the equalization grant. With conditional grant, the government puts conditions. For instance, money is given to the central government, to the local government, for maintenance of the roads, for schools, hospitals. So that money has conditions attached to it. That is what we call conditional grant. Then we have an unconditional grant, which has no strings attached, and then equalization grant. And this is money given to the low-performing districts so that they can be at the same level of development with other districts. Then another source of revenue for local governments is called property rates. Anyone owning property, especially in urban areas, pays some money which is charged on him by local government, and this is a source of revenue for the local government. Like you have a building in town, you have to pay tax for it. Then we have fees and fines. Fees for the use of local government property and services, and then fines for the lawbreakers. Then licenses and permits, then licenses to operate business transactions. Then interest on investments. Like you have invested, then like the local government can invest and then it gets interest as a source of revenue. Rents from the use of the local government property. Donations, local government also receives donations from well-wishers. Charges or profits arising from any trade, services, or undertaking carried out by the council. Annual bicycle licenses, charcoal burning licenses, and any other revenue which may be prescribed by local government. Therefore, these are the different sources of revenue for local governments. And as I've already told you, that funds from the local government include conditional grant, including a conditional grant, and equalization grant. So despite the fact that decentralization policy was implemented, does not mean that the center has no relationship with the local government. The central government under Article Section 83, Regulation 42 of the Financial and Accounting Regulation 2006, it outlines the grants received by the local governments from the central government. And these grants are got from the consolidated fund. And as I've said, they are categorized as conditional, unconditional, and equalization grant. Conditional grant, as I've already said, let me emphasize it again, is money given to local governments in order to fund programs agreed upon between the central government and the local government. And it is spent on purposes for which it was made in accordance with the terms and conditions agreed upon. Then, unconditional grant. This is minimum grant given to the local governments to run decentralized services. Local governments have independence to a great extent as to how to budget for this grant, taking into consideration the national priority program areas. The equalization grant, as I've said, is money paid to the local governments for special provisions for the least developed districts. It is based on the degree to which a local government is lagging behind the national average standard for a particular service. The central government remits conditional, unconditional, and equalization grants direct to the district, city, municipal, and town councils. Section 83, subsection 5 of the Local Government Act requires local government councils to indicate how conditional and equalization grants obtained from the center are to be passed on to the lower councils. Local governments can also raise revenue through borrowing. So also borrowing is a source of local government revenue. Regulation 20 of the 5th schedule to the Local Government Act gives local governments powers to borrow or incur debts, but with certain limitations. Regulation 8 of the Financial and Accounting Regulations 2006 also stipulates these procedures. Briefly, let us look at budgeting in the local governments. We'll also start about budgeting in the local governments, then we shall complete it next time. Budgets are instruments of management, planning, and control. Local governments have the right and obligation to formulate, approve, and execute their budgets and plans, provided the budgets are balanced, and that is Section 77 of the Local Government Act, Cap 243. In addition, local governments have to accord national priority program areas preferential budget outlays. If a local government budget significantly detracts from the priority program areas, then the Local Government Financial Commission is required to inform the council and the president through the Minister of Local Government for appropriate action as provided in Section 77, subsection 3 of the Local Government Act. What is a budget? A budget is a statement that reflects the funds available to the government, where they come from, and the division of the funds between the functions and the services. In short, a budget provides annual estimates of revenue and expenditure. Now, the budgets for local governments have to be harmonized